Welcome to Marketplace Tech Bytes. It's our weekly roundup of some of the big goings-on in the tech world and maybe some stories you missed. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino. This week, China's DeepSeek shakes up the global AI landscape. Trump has vowed to impose tariffs on chips from overseas. And senators have revived a bill to ban kids from social media. Here to discuss all that is our regular contributor, Paresh Dave from Wired. Hey, Paresh.
Hey, Megan.
So good to have you. Well, we're going to kick things off like we always do with our Byte of the Week. This is a number that gives us a little insight into the week in tech. So, Paresh, what number do we need to know this week?
We're entering the sixth year of the Chinese calendar, which is the year of the snake. So I figured I'd go with 6 million, which is the number that we're all buzzing about here in Silicon Valley. It's what DeepSeek says the amount of money it costs to train this new model. And that's a tenth of the cost that Meta and some of these big companies have been spending. So that's, very significant. Exactly 5.6 million, but we'll call it 6.
All right. Yeah. So big earthquake that happened. I mean, it kind of happened this week, although the chatter about DeepSeek has been out in the world for, a good month or so. But this was the week that the markets really reacted to it. DeepSeek, this is a Chinese AI company that was started kind of like a side project by a hedge fund manager in China. It has thrilled and horrified the world with its capable AI models, which can kind of go head to head with the best models out there. Yet, as you note, cost significantly less to build, mainly because it uses significantly less compute power, these specialized chips that have become kind of their own form of currency in the tech world. Paresh, this sounds like potentially a good development, this breakthrough in AI innovation, but unpack for us why the markets are going crazy this week.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was that $6 million number. It seemed like maybe these AI developers, whether it be a Meta or an OpenAI or a Google, could get away with spending a lot less money, buying a lot less chips, and still coming up with these powerful models. But I think as people have digested it, there's a lot of caveats in the number. That 6 million doesn't really cover everything. We don't have the full picture. We can't necessarily trust what's being told from this Chinese company. Not just because they're from China, but also because this is not a peer-reviewed paper. There's it's sort of like a preprint. There's a lot of questions, but I think that's sort of what has gotten people into this frenzy is just that uncertainty. Does this really mean that everything we've been betting on the last few months or the last couple of years is totally wrong?
Right. So you look at a company like OpenAI, it has a value of 157 billion, companies and investors are just piling money into this on the kind of expectation that there will come a time when you get a return on that investment. Now it looks like, well, maybe, you don't need to spend so much money to get some kind of return. I think already we were in an environment where there were so many competing different large language models, chatbots out there that it was starting to look like a commodity where, users and companies, enterprises are just going to have their pick of the litter when it comes to this stuff. I mean, what do you think this signals about the future of the AI market?
Exactly. I think you put it well that the novelty was kind of lost. But what this shows is that it's very much still there. Like when these new things with what feels like new capabilities, even though it's kind of the same and it's kind of censored, people are excited to try these things out. And to me, it shows that the public appetite that we saw for ChatGPT when it first came out in November 2022, and there were like 1 million people using it within a week and 100 million people using it within a few weeks. That sort of excitement, that fervor is still there. I mean, DeepSeek is number one or reached number one this week on both the Google Play and Apple App Stores. I mean, that's significant. There's still a lot of enthusiasm for it. So I think if there was ever a moment where there was going to be like a pause, and we're going to stop all this AI development, like some researchers have called for, that's not going to happen anytime soon.
Do you think this very swift and dramatic change in the markets has been a bit short-sighted?
Absolutely, but I think there's also still a lot of questions that are not maybe being addressed as much as they should be. Is this race to build the best model, something we should be doing? Is it good for society? Is it good for the environment? What are all the implications and costs? I think there continue to be a lot of researchers, a lot of ethicists who are calling for let's slow down, let's think through this. But DeepSeek is only going to catalyze other companies, whether it be a Google, Meta, OpenAI, to speed up, not slow down.
All right. Well, one of the big issues in the whole DeepSeek drama has been chips that they seem to not have access through some export controls to the most advanced GPUs, which many of the AI companies are using. And this week we got a little nugget from President Trump on the future of chips. He was speaking at a retreat for House Republicans. And he talked about some of the top issues on his agenda, one of which was semiconductors. Let's hear what he had to say.
In particular, in the very near future, we're going to be placing tariffs on foreign production of computer chips, semiconductors, and pharmaceuticals to return production of these essential goods to the United States of America. Build your plant. If you want to stop paying the taxes or the tariffs, you have to build your plant right here in America. That's what's going to happen at record levels.
All right, now, Paresh, we should probably note here before we get into this that semiconductors from overseas, that's like almost all of them at this point, right?
Pretty much, there's hope of building some facilities here, but yeah, a lot of them from Taiwan, South Korea. Really, what Trump is saying here is that he wants to use a stick, not the carrot approach that Biden had been, proposing and moving forward with. Whether that's good or bad to be seen.
Yeah, so the Biden administration had helped to pass the Chips and Science Act. It was a law enacted by Congress, allocates $52 billion in subsidies for chip makers, which many of which have already kind of gone out. We already see the TSMC production facility in Arizona is already producing chips, kind of with high efficiency. But this is really, kind of incentivizing chip makers to build plants here or disincentivizing them from bringing in chips from the outside by spurring them to build factories. This is kind of like a long-term project. So what could be the effects of having tariffs on chips, which have become such the lifeblood of our economy?
Yeah, Trump threw out some big numbers, 25, 50, 100%. And he believes that doing that, charging 100% tax potentially on TSMC to ship a chip from Taiwan to the US, will get them to just build those factories here. He said, he doesn't want to give them billions. He thinks these subsidies are ludicrous, but he did still say that he wants to support them, whatever that means. And if you're a TSMC, that's significant. To pay those extra tariffs, even though there's customer demand and customers are probably willing to absorb a lot of those costs, in the long run, that can't be good for them and their relationships with these customers. So one way or another, it does seem like there are going to be more chip factories in the US.
And TBD on kind of the fate of the remaining of that $52 billion that was allocated by Congress. But we finally kind of want to get to a move in Congress to ban kids from social media. This week, Senators Ted Cruz and Brian Schatz from opposite sides of the aisle reintroduced an old bill called the Kids Off Social Media Act, or COSMA. Kind of disappointed it doesn't have one of those cute acronyms, but this bill would ban anyone under the age of 13 from social media platforms, restrict the platforms from collecting certain kinds of sensitive data from users under 17. Here's what Senator Schatz had to say about an early iteration of the bill last year.
There is no First Amendment right for an 11-year-old to be on Instagram while an algorithm targets them with content glorifying starvation and fueling insecurities. And the only way that it'll stop is if the federal law finally mandates that companies keep young kids off of their services.
All right, Paresh, what do you make of this move to revive this bill right now?
I have a few thoughts on it. One, I think President Trump is looking for some legislative victories, and with the Republicans in control of Congress, and a lot of bipartisan alignment on sort of regulating social media and providing more protections and safeguards for kids. I mean, I think this feels like something that they could deliver to the president's desk and something that he'd be happy to sign. Anything related to women and children, I think he wants to take credit for. And this isn't the only bill like this. Senator Ted Cruz, one of the co-sponsors of this COSMA bill, also has co-sponsored a bill, the Take It Down Act, that would basically require these social media companies to take down explicit images shared without people's consent within 48 hours of it being reported to them, which is significant. It almost passed a month ago and got to President Biden's desk. But I've heard from people that, they wanted to send it to President Trump and let him have that victory. So I think that's significant. But the wild card for me is the companies. Are they going to support this,
Right.
now that they have this sort of more cozy relationship with the White House? Companies that had been supportive of regulation, where will they come down on something like this?
Right, because almost passed can be applied to a number of bills where there was bipartisan support. The Kids Online Safety Act kind of withered on the vine during the end of the session at the end of the year. This was a bill that would have kind of held social media companies liable for harms. Kind of got held up with a lot of pushback from the industry. So I imagine that will continue to be an issue.
And not just the industry, but also, civil and human rights groups who are concerned
Right.
about what does this mean for teenagers or young kids' ability to find community online and express themselves. And I don't think we found, a good middle ground here on some of these issues.
All right, Paresh Dave at Wired, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And thanks to all of you for watching Marketplace Tech Bytes Week in Review. Jesus Alvarado produced this episode. I'm Megan McCarty-Carino. This is APM.